Shana Tova. Hello and welcome to all who are here. The second day of Rosh Hashanah. This is always a special day on the Jewish calendar, especially for those of us who are in the habit of coming to shul often. We have this mindset that today is in fact another day of Rosh Hashanah, and we've prepared ourselves once again to spend the day in shul with our machzor, making our way through prayers that we say only a few times every year. And whether you're joining us in person or via the Zoomiverse, I recognize that you are here, that we are all here, and this is a substantial commitment in time and in focus. Thank you for your presence today on this special day. Today, on this special day, I want to tell a special story. The story of my first trip to Israel and of my time studying there, and how these experiences shaped me into the pro-Israel rabbi I am today. And I want to open an important conversation, a conversation about what it means for us as a community at this particular point in time to support Israel, our homeland, and our Holy Land. Of course, there is so much to be said about this, especially as we are aware of the changing and changeable situation at this point in time. As I begin telling this story, as we together begin opening this conversation, my prayer is that our conversation will continue far beyond today and that our conversation will move us to action. I'll begin with the story. It was the summer after my first year in rabbinical school. That is my first year, not at Ziegler where I was ordained as rabbi, but at the Academy for Jewish Religion, where I began my rabbinic learning. At the time, I had recently moved to Los Angeles, and I had recently, for the first time, applied for a passport. I didn't yet have concrete plans to go to Israel, but I yearned to go and pray, to go and learn. In conversation with classmates and community members, I found that they were uniformly flabbergasted that I hadn't been to Israel already. I found myself needing to explain, needing to affirm, that not all Jewish stories are the same, that not all Jews are the same, that my background simply is not a traditional one, that I was working hard to travel to Israel, our Holy Land, and to Jerusalem, our holy city. In time, I began studying at Ziegler. In time, my year of study abroad in Jerusalem was just ahead, and in time, I found myself arriving at the airport in Tel Aviv, then arriving at the Agron hostel in Jerusalem. The next morning, as if on autopilot, I found myself in the old city walking towards the Western Wall. Basking in the sun, breathing in the air, I found myself at home in a way I had never felt before. I hadn't even been there for 24 hours. As I compare my experience to that of others, I see it as both not at all typical and very typical. Certainly, it is unusual for an American rabbinic student to arrive in Israel for the first time, traveling alone, about to begin a year of study abroad. Yet, it is not unusual to arrive in Israel for the first time and for the place itself, the land itself, to inspire an immediate and powerful connection in a person's Jewish soul. Just being there, we can tell, we can feel that this is the land of our ancestors, that this is the land that God commanded us to go and inhabit. This land is our home. As the year continued, and as I have continued to reflect upon that year's experiences since they've concluded, I continue to see my experience as both not at all typical and very typical. My experience is not at all typical because my background is not what you'd typically expect for an American Jew or an American rabbi. I did not grow up with a robust education about Israel or with family trips to Israel. When I got to college, I was surprised and confused to meet Jewish classmates that already had a powerful personal connection to a land that seemed so far away. On the other hand, my experience is very typical. The learning and exploration that I was privileged to experience in Jerusalem and on our tiyulim throughout Israel opened my eyes and opened my soul, creating a lasting and lifelong personal and spiritual connection. This personal connection this spiritual connection, is rich and deep, and it is not complicated. I'm Jewish. This land is my home, my inheritance. I must protect our land, and I must protect our people. This is very simple. It's very straightforward. Throughout the year, as our required courses took us on Tiyulim, as we rabbinical students began to receive invitations from all sorts of outside organizations to meet all sorts of people and join all sorts of events, I experienced moments that did not seem at all straightforward. One such event was a prayer service at the Western Wall, not the egalitarian section, but instead the women's section. It was a Rosh Chodesh service, and our school encouraged us to join. It was going to be a special event with several well-known American rabbis in attendance. Eager to pray at the Western Wall, I decided to join without giving it too much thought. But as we marched through the old city with cameras on us and protesters beginning to surround us, I began to realize that this was not just a prayer service. This was a political protest. It began to sink in that for me, as an American who had only lived in America, I took the separation of church and state for granted. It hadn't occurred to me that a prayer service could simultaneously be a political action. On that day, in that moment, I began to understand that Jewish prayer in the land of Israel is different from Jewish prayer anywhere else. My personal relationship with Israel, my love for Israel, was in no way diminished that day, even though my experience wasn't entirely pleasant. On the contrary, my relationship with Israel was deepening and growing as I began to learn that the texture of Israeli life is more rich, more varied than I had previously known. It wasn't until the middle of my year of study that I was able to spend time with Israelis outside the context of a class or a program or a tiyul. Through the connection of an American friend who had lived in Israel, I was able to visit and talk with Israelis and their families in Jerusalem, Haifa, and Tel Aviv. And as you might already be imagining, I had 3 very different experiences. Of course, in Jerusalem, the visit was over a Shabbat dinner. We walked from Talpiot to Kabbalat Shabbat services at a private home, then back to Talpiot. Over dinner, there was a discussion about whether or not it was dangerous to go to the old city. At this point, I had already been there many times on my own, with friends, with a group of classmates, or on a school-sponsored activity. I remember being very surprised by the idea that the old city was a dangerous place. And I remember my hosts being just as surprised by my surprise, as if everyone should know that the risk of terrorist activity in that area is prohibitively high. Now, in Tel Aviv. Our visit was at a trendy and exciting restaurant. Our server was a true Sabra, and, this actually happened, somewhere in the middle of the meal, she began to encourage us rather strongly to join her in taking shots of limoncello. At some point after that, there was a brief discussion about the IDF, and one person who had served in the IDF admitted that he wasn't entirely comfortable with everything he'd been asked to do. He rushed to change the topic, not wanting to give any impression that he lacked in his support. Perhaps without the limoncello, that part of the conversation would have never happened. In some ways, the visit to Haifa made the strongest impression on me. Our conversations were less about religious and military activity and more about the best type of heating to install in one's home, what it's like to work in high tech, and how many costumes a family with 3 children would need to fully participate in school spirit activities in the week leading up to Purim, which is a whole closet full of costumes. You need a lot. We also visited a Masorti synagogue for Saturday morning services, and we went out to explore the city after Shabbat had ended, seeing Israelis of different religious and cultural backgrounds enjoying a night out all together. None of these 3 visits was anything like the education and programs provided by my school. These 3 visits were uncurated, unfiltered, diverse, and layered. Just being able to spend time with Israelis in their homes, seeing the incredible variety and incredible commitment, that these three families, Israeli families, all held for our people and for our homeland, brought me a new sense of closeness that deepened my commitment and my love. This is the story of my relationship with Israel, of the people that I met and the places that I visited, of the moments I remember most vividly when I stand up for Israel and when I stand in support of Israel. These moments, these memories are more vivid than ever right now, as I and as we all have been following the unfolding of events in our homeland and our Holy Land. And as we watch these events unfold, this is the conversation I want to open in this community. What should we do? I feel extraordinarily blessed that in this pro-Israel community, in our pro-Israel community, there is room for more than one possible answer to this question. I want to articulate a few possibilities here, completely not an exhaustive list, but most importantly, I invite and I ask all of you to speak with one another about these ideas with curiosity and with respect. I believe that in our diversity, we have strength, and I trust that being open, rather than silent, is the best way for us to express our love and support for Israel and for one another. So with that, here are some possibilities, and again, please understand that these are not the only possibilities, the only options that we have. One possibility, articulated by Simcha Rothman, member of Knesset from the Religious Zionist Party. Americans should refrain from commenting on the situation. Americans should contact their members of Congress and encourage them to refrain from commenting on the situation. This view affirms that this unfolding of events is a situation that is best handled by Israelis without input or interference from the American government. Another possibility, articulated by the organization Unacceptable, which is founded and formed by Israelis living in America, go out to the streets and protest. Crowds have been gathering in New York, San Francisco, and here in Los Angeles, in which Israelis and American Jews gather regularly to stand up and speak out in solidarity with all those who are protesting in Israel. This view and this action affirms that the current Israeli government is acting in a way that we must not tolerate. Yet another possibility, articulated by Yitzhar Hess, CEO of the Masorti movement in Israel and vice chairman of the World Zionist Organization, is for us to exercise our right to vote. Jews worldwide have the ability to join a Zionist organization and in that capacity vote on the financial decisions of major organizations such as the Jewish Agency for Israel and the Jewish National Fund. This view affirms that Jews worldwide have the power to cast a vote and make a difference on issues that directly impact Israel and the global Jewish community. My hope and my prayer on this Rosh Hashanah is that we as an Adat Shalom community can continue to be bravely and proudly pro-Israel, and that we can understand as we listen to and speak with one another that there are multiple possible ways for us to express our support for Israel. I hope and I pray that you all speak with me and you all speak with one another about these essential issues of our time. And I hope and I pray that this speaking also involves listening and learning and deepens our understanding, that ultimately we will take action to best protect our homeland and our Holy Land, the State of Israel. Shana Tova.